in the first part, we're going to look at an overview of the test. And then we'll look at some things that you should and should not do in the test as well as some things that you don't need to do. And then we'll look at each part of the test and see what's involved. And then we'll look at how the test is marked and how your language is assessed. Then, like I said earlier, we'll do a little bit on the VCS test and how that's different from the face-to-face test. And then we'll finish off with a conclusion for this show. And maybe if there's time afterwards, we'll do a little mock speaking test followed by some questions from you all, which I'll answer. Okay, so let's start on the overview of the IELTS test, VCS. What do you need to bring with you? Well, not very much, as it turns out. Just your ID, your passport or national ID card. Yeah, so that's the same as with the face-to-face test. The difference is that in VCS, you will not have to present it to the examiner because, of course, they're online. So you will present it to the test day staff. But make sure you don't forget your ID. Of course, it's very important that you bring that. So how is the test structured? Well, it's the same as the face-to-face test. So there are 3 parts. Part 1 is between 4 and 5 minutes long, and the questions are personal in nature. So they'll be about you, your life, or life in your country. And there are some introductory questions at the start as well. Part 2 is between 3 and 4 minutes long, and this is a long talk related to usually your life in some way or an experience that you've had. And then part 3, it's the same length as part 1, so between 4 and 5 minutes. And these are the questions here are more general in nature, and it's related. The topic is related to the topic in part 2. There are no real differences in the VCS test that you would notice between that and the face-to-face test. So how is speaking assessed? Well, there are the same 4 categories as in the face-to-face test. So one is fluency and coherent, meaning is your speech fluent and structured well? We'll go into more details in these categories later. Lexical resource is the second one, which is just a fancy way of saying vocabulary. So is a good range of vocabulary used, and is it used accurately? Next, we have grammatical range and accuracy. So is a wide range of grammar features used? And again, are those features used accurately? And are they used flexibly as well? Finally, there's pronunciation. So is a range of pronunciation features used? And we'll look at that in more detail later, what we mean by pronunciation features. And is speech easy to understand? All right, so things you should and should not do during the test. We'll start with do's. Make sure you arrive early, of course. So make sure that you understand, the parking arrangements of the building, the test center you're going to, and exactly how to get there, because you need to arrive about 10-15 minutes early to give you some time to take in your surroundings and relax. Now, it is important, of course, that you relax before you go into the test, because we all produce our best performance in anything, really, when you're in a relaxed state of mind. So yeah, as I said, arrive early to help with that. And also, if you get nervous, there are some things that you can do to calm your nerves before you go in. So some things you can do: you can go for a walk if you've got time. But there's something also called the stop technique. Now, this is commonly used in job interviews or before job interviews or any stressful situation. And stop stands for S, which means stop what you're doing. T, take some deep breaths. So in through your nose and out through your mouth. Now, if you do that 6 times or so, you will feel yourself starting to relax. The O stands for observe. So ask yourself, why do I feel like this? And then think, actually, it's not that bad. It's not a dangerous situation. And then P is proceed. So continue thinking about, what you've just learned. Some other things you can do. You can eat a good meal before, but make sure you don't do that just before you go in, because if you do that, you'll feel very sleepy and you won't produce a good performance. But it's important to eat maybe a couple of hours before you go in, and make sure you get enough water to drink as well. Another thing you can do is to plan something for afterwards, to meet your friends in a cafe or something like that. It helps to take your mind off the situation and gives you something to look forward to afterwards. Now, the next one is not for everyone, but if you're this kind of a person, you can talk to yourself in a mirror if you're not shy. And use your nerves to help get excited. Say things like, you can do this. Like I say, that's not for everyone. Now, if the examiners, if they're do their job properly, and they certainly should be, they will help you to relax, and that is with the aim of getting you to produce your best language. So, to produce good language as well, you need to make sure that you understand the examiner's questions. So, the way we do that is to ask the examiner to repeat a question, or you can ask what a word means. You can ask for a definition. We'll get into that in more detail later. If you do that, your speech will be more coherent. It will relate to the question better. And if you don't do that, you might think you're answering the question, but actually you've gone a bit off topic, which is not great, as we will talk about later. So you need to try to develop your answers, give reasons, extra details. Again, we'll go into that in more detail later. The aim of the IELTS speaking test, well, all of the IELTS test, is to show how much language you know. So if you answer a question just yes or no, that's not really showing off your language very well. So you need to give more information. Some things you should not do. So don't give memorized answers. It's not a good idea. You will not be directly penalized for that, unlike in writing, because in writing, if you produce an entirely memorized response, you get band 0. It's not quite the same in speaking, but it's still not a good idea, because it's very easy to tell when somebody is giving a memorized answer. It just doesn't sound natural. And memorized language is generally not considered when assessing language. So it's much better to just answer the questions naturally. Also, don't worry if the examiner interrupts you. It's not them being rude. The test has very strict time limits. So if time runs out, the examiner has to move on to the next part, and that often means that they will interrupt you. Also, don't ask the examiner too many questions. Remember, it's your speaking test. The examiner is not there to answer your questions. You're there to answer their questions. So, but what you can do is to ask if you're not sure what the examiner said or meant. So what do you not need to do? Well, you don't need to dress smartly. Many people think you do, but you don't. Jeans and a t-shirt are just fine. But I would still say it's a good idea because you need to try and create a good impression. And some people find that dressing up smartly can help with their confidence as well. But it's really up to you. You don't actually have to tell the truth or give your real opinions. And the same is true of the writing test as well. You'll need to remember that the examiner has no idea who you are. They've never met you before. So you can, as long as you use good English, good language, and your answer makes sense, then it doesn't matter if you tell the truth or not. So it's quite a good idea with IELTS speaking to get very good at lying. You'll find that's quite a useful skill, especially if you get an unfamiliar topic. So let's look at the different parts of the IELTS speaking test now. So, of course, there's part one, as we talked about earlier. Now, this is considered to be the least difficult part of the test. And why is that? Well, there are up to 12 questions, and the questions are about your life or life in your country. So they're quite personal in nature, so they're not so difficult to answer. However, you may get some questions that you don't understand completely. Now, if this happens, you can ask the examiner to repeat the question. They will only do that once, by the way. Or you can ask for the definition of a word. That's absolutely fine. If you do that, the examiner will give a short definition of the word you don't know. Don't ask the examiner to rephrase the question, because if you do that, they will simply repeat the question. And again, if you say you don't understand, again, the examiner will simply repeat the question. Now, in part one, you should be aiming for about 2 long sentences for each answer. Now, that's about 20 to 25 seconds. That should be enough to answer all of the questions well. Now, part two. The examiner will start by giving you instructions, introducing what's going to happen, and then it will check that you understand those instructions. Then you are given some paper and a pencil for making notes on and preparing the topic. Of course, in VCS, the notes, the paper and the pencil are in front of you already. You can ask for an explanation of the question or unknown vocabulary if you're not sure what the question is asking you to do. But if you do that, try to do it as soon as you can. Don't wait. If you see anything on the question that you are not sure about, ask the examiner immediately. Of course, you get 1 minute to prepare your answers. To prepare your answer, and in that time you need to make your notes, and after the 1 minute preparation time has finished, you will then speak for a minimum of 1 minute and a maximum of 2 minutes, and then you need to at the end of your talk answer a follow-up question that the examiner will answer you. Okay, so you need to start making notes as soon as you get the topic. Don't wait. It helps you to organize your answer. And it is quite a long time to speak, 2 minutes. Even for a native speaker, it's, without stopping, it's not an easy thing to do. So your notes will help to guide you and, so that you don't lose where you are. And don't forget important details as well. You can also make a note of good vocabulary that you will use. It doesn't matter if you write it down. You've thought of it. If you write it down, you use it, it counts. So it's a good idea to do that. Try to speak for the full 2 minutes if you can. Now, if you are still speaking after 2 minutes, the examiner will stop you. However, if you finish your talk a little bit early and don't wish to continue, let the examiner know. You can say something like, "Thank you, that's it, I'm finished." Just make it clear to the examiner that you want to stop. If you finish a little bit too early, say after 1 minute, you just stop speaking. The examiner will wait a little bit of time and then they will try to get you speaking again. But if aside from that, the examiner will just allow you to speak. They won't generally say anything. In part 3, now, many people consider this to be the most difficult part. Other people consider part 2 to be difficult because they have to speak for a long time. But most people consider part 3 to be the most difficult part. Now, the topic, as I mentioned earlier, is related to your talk in part 2. And the questions in part 3 become much more general and impersonal. And because of that, you should avoid talking about yourself. If you do, the examiner will ask you questions to try to get you to speak about things more generally. You will be asked for your opinions at points. And remember, if you don't have an opinion on the topic, you've never really thought about it before, remember, the opinions don't have to be real. They don't have to be your opinions. You can just invent them. That's absolutely fine, as long as you use good English to explain them. Now, the questions are not always scripted. The examiner will react to the answers that you give by asking you more questions based on your answers, and it becomes more like a discussion. However, the questions can get very challenging. They tend to get more difficult, especially towards the very end of the test. But if you are really stuck with anything the examiner has asked you, you can ask for the definitions of words you don't know. You can also, in part 3, unlike in part 1, you can ask the examiner to rephrase the question, and they will do that for you. They will change the wording of the question so it's easier for you to understand. Okay, so let's talk now about how the test is marked. So the first category, as I mentioned, is fluency and coherence. Now, what do we mean by fluency? Fluency is, hesitation. Now, there are 2 types of hesitation. One is content related, and the other is language related. So content related means you are preparing in your mind what you want to say next. And language related hesitation is because you're trying to think of the vocabulary or grammar structures that you need to produce the answers. And how do you know the difference? Well, content related happens generally at the start of a sentence, whereas language related hesitation, it means you get to the middle of a sentence and you start going and that's because you're thinking of language to say. So what else do we mean by fluency? It's repetition and self-correction. So are you repeating yourself? Are you correcting your grammar structures a lot and your vocabulary a lot? You can improve both of these things by pausing briefly to think before you start speaking. This allows you some time to prepare your answer in your head, and this will prevent you from getting to the middle of a sentence and hesitating, which will, of course, be interpreted as language-related hesitation. So if you pause before you start speaking, then it will not actually affect your fluency score. Whereas if you just start speaking and not really considering what you say before you start speaking, you'll get to the middle of a sentence and then start hesitating, and that will affect your fluency score. Now, you can use some fillers if you need to just to give you a little bit of time to think. For example, you could say, "I haven't really thought about that before. That's an interesting question." Just gives you a little bit of time, and you fill those kind of silences with a bit of language. Don't do it for every answer, though, because it sounds a bit strange after a while. Okay, what do we mean by coherence? So coherence is the logical ordering of your speech and something called topic development, how you develop your ideas. Now, we can use linking words are known as cohesive devices in IELTS. Basic ones are the ones we all get taught in elementary classes, and, but, or, so, because. But there are also more advanced cohesive devices as well, such as however, also, in addition, whereas, that kind of thing. But there are also others. Ordering points, for example, firstly, secondly, then, next, finally. There are also ones for sounding less direct. You know, if you want to talk in a more general and impersonal way, which you may well be asked to do, you could say things like sort of, or people tend to. There are also ones for showing attitude, like hopefully, fortunately, obviously, clearly. Try to use as wide a range of these linking words, cohesive devices as you can, and that will help to increase your coherence score. Now, let's look at lexical resource. Now, what do we mean by that? We talk about range of vocabulary. We talked about that before. Now, you can use things like descriptors for words to increase your range. So what do we mean? We mean adverbs. We can also paraphrase language. So paraphrase the questions. Think of different words that you can use, synonyms, different sentence structures to paraphrase the language in the questions, but also paraphrase yourself. Don't keep repeating the language that you use. Now, you can improve your range of vocabulary by reading books and articles, newspaper articles, things like that, blogs in English. It's called extensive reading. You might think of it as reading for pleasure. It's a great way for learning vocabulary, and it is how native speakers improve their vocabulary. But it's not just about the range. It's also about the accuracy of the vocabulary that you used. If you want to get the really high band scores in lexical resource, you need to try to use the vocabulary as accurately and precisely as you can. So the more accurate and precise it is, the better. Now, it's important to use accurate collocations. So an example of that would be make a mistake, not do a mistake. And also try to convey precise meaning. So an example of that would be fur when we're talking about cats. We don't use the word hair like we would for people. Next, we have grammatical range and accuracy. So again, it's about range and accuracy, as with all parts of the the criteria you are marked on. So is the candidate using a range of grammar structures? Now, what do we mean? We mean complex sentences. So an example of complex sentences would be sentences with a conjunction and a subordinate clause. So, for example, I go to work at 7 o'clock and then I check my emails when I get there. Something like that. Relative clauses. So for example, the man that is standing over there is looking at you. And then you can also have conditionals. So if this happens, then something else happens. Modal verbs are also important. So verbs like could, should, would, can. There are lots of ways that modal verbs can be used. So try to learn a few of those. Noun phrases, I mentioned one of those before, like you have a phrase for the subject of a sentence, like, for example, the man standing over there is looking at you. So, of course, the subject of that sentence is a noun phrase, the man standing over there. And you need to try to use a range of tenses. So, for example, if you're talking about the past, when you were a child, you could use things like used to and would, and not just the past simple. Or you could use future tenses like will, or maybe even future perfect, will have been. try to use as many different tenses as you can and try to use them accurately. So what do we mean by the accuracy? So how many errors are there in the sentences, and do those errors cause difficulty with understanding? So of course, the more errors there are, the more difficult it is for the listener to understand, then generally the lower the band score will be. But try to be as ambitious as you can. Don't use simple language and try to get it all right. You will not be rewarded for that. It's very important that you use as wide a range as you can and worry about fixing the errors later. So you get more credit for being ambitious with your language. Even if you make lots of mistakes, you will generally get a higher score if you use more complex language. The last category is pronunciation. So try to use a range of pronunciation features. Now, English is what's called a stress-timed language. Now, what do we mean by stress timing? We could talk about syllable stress in words, like, for example, computer, things like that. You stress the middle syllable in that word. But it's also about sentence stress. So, you stress the content words in sentences like main verbs, adverbs, adjectives, and in question words you would stress question. In questions you would stress question words like what, how, why. But also stress can be used for more advanced language as well. Like for contrast, for example, you would say something like, my father is a history teacher, but I am a maths teacher. So you see how we've stressed maths and I in that sentence. Now, where you have stress timing, you also have weak forms. So that's the sound. So grammar words in English, like prepositions, for example, are generally not stressed. They take the weak form. So the stress timing in a sentence has a certain rhythm. So if the sentences have a good rhythm and also there's good use of intonation, then that will help to improve your pronunciation score. Now, it can be a difficult thing to get an intonation because it's not a tonal language. Quite often, lower level learners think that that English is flat. It's not. As you can hear from my voice, it's kind of bouncing up and down all over the place. But it's done obviously in a different way from Vietnamese. Now, another feature of pronunciation in English is connected speech. So we love to stick words together in English. And there are different ways of doing this. We can link consonant and vowel sounds, for example. So a phrase like think about it, think about it, think about it. We don't have each word separate. They're all stuck together. Another way we can do it is by something called assimilation, so linking consonant sounds. So something like more rice, more rice. It sounds like more ice. If you stick them together, we say more rice. But you can also say something like red ball. So we don't say red ball. Again, that slows our speech down. We don't like doing that in English, so we try to stick words together. Red ball. It sounds like red ball, as I put in brackets there, square brackets. Another way of connecting speech is by something called elision. What do we mean by this? It's dropping sounds so that it's easier to say the word. Like I say, we don't like to slow down, so any difficult sounds in words, we generally omit them. So we wouldn't say grandma, for example. We would say grandma to say it quickly. But also this works between words as well. We would not say most famous. We'd say most famous. So dropping the T sound. Another way is something called intrusion. And this is in adding extra consonant sounds between vowel sounds. So for example, you would not say so old. We'd say so old. So we've got an extra little word sound there, so old. Or the only one. So we've got the only, stick them together, the only, yeah, we've got a yeah sound there. Another one is China is big, we don't say it like that. We say China is, China is. So we get an extra R sound there. China is big. Okay, so the next part of this is errors as well. So how many pronunciation errors are there? And do these errors make speech difficult to understand? So as with other parts, the more errors there are with pronunciation, the lower the score will be. And if the errors make speech difficult to understand, then generally, of course, the score will get lower. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the VCS test now, the video call speaking test. So before you start, you'll be taken into the test room by the test invigilator. And the examiner will already be on screen waiting for you. You will need to put on a headset. The invigilator will help you that and make sure it fits you and it's nice and comfortable. Now, this headset will help you to hear the examiner's questions more clearly. As I mentioned, the invigilator and the examiner will ensure that you are comfortable and that you can hear clearly before the exam starts. Now, for the VCS test, you can expect a very clear sound and a fast connection, so there won't be any delay between what the examiner asks you and what you hear. So during the test, make sure you are always speaking clearly, as you would with the face-to-face test, of course. Try not to touch the headset or the mic or any of the other equipment because this can affect the sound quality. For example, some people think that they will be heard more clearly if they put the mic right in front of their mouth. This does not help because actually it produces, it's too loud for the examiner and it can distort your voice. So just once it's in the correct place, just leave it alone. So don't touch the test materials, meaning the pencil and paper, until you are instructed to in part 2. So in part 2, the topic appears on your screen. As soon as it appears on your screen, start making notes immediately. Don't wait for any other instructions. Once your screen has got the topic on it, the time for you to make notes has already started. If you start to experience problems with your connection or with the sound, make sure that you let the examiner know immediately or the invigilator. Once the test has finished, the examiner will let you know that, and then you can simply take off your headset and leave the test room. So, some questions about VCS. Do I need to do anything with the computer? No, you don't. It's all worked out for you. The invigilator and the examiner will take care of any technical issues. Is there any time lag? Do I need to pause between sentences? Well, yes, of course. It's over the internet. There is some time lag, but the connection is fast, so you will not notice the time lag. You can just speak as if you were in the same room as the examiner. So what do I do if there's a problem with the sound connection? So point to the headset, indicate there's a problem to the examiner, and then they will, if the examiner can't hear you, you need to get the attention of the invigilator. But it should be noted that problems don't happen very often with VCS. It's usually a very smooth process. So in conclusion, what should I do to succeed in the IELTS speaking test? Read extensively, as I mentioned before, to improve your vocabulary. So read books, read articles, blogs in English. They're written by native speakers, using the language naturally, flexibly, in context. You get a much clearer idea of, English vocabulary and how it should be used doing this, and it will improve your vocabulary. Try to find a study buddy. Ideally, they should be a native speaker. I appreciate that's not always easy to do. And finally, practice. Practice makes perfect. So that concludes our talk for today on the VCS test and the IELTS speaking test more generally. Do we have time to do a mock speaking? I believe we do. So I will be taking requests for that. Okay, so I have a candidate here. All right, we'll do a full speaking test. Can I just check? Can you hear me fine? Can I hear
Hello.
you? Hello.
Yes, hello. I can hear you well. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you perfectly. Okay,
Thank you.
let's make a start. Then we'll do like a mock speaking test now, all three parts if we can. I think we've got time to do that.
Great. Yes. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes.
My name is Simon Brown. Can you tell me your full name, please?
My name is Minho, so you can call me Minho for short.
Thank you. And can you tell me where you're from?
I'm from Vietnam. Actually, I'm from a Bình Phước province, which is a remote area in Vietnam. My area is famous for cashew nuts. In case you don't know, that is a normally we know it as a golden fruit in Vietnam.
Now, in this first part, I'd like to ask you some questions about yourself. Let's talk about what you do. Do you work or are you a student?
At the moment, I'm working as a government official in Bình Phước province. So my job mainly includes talking with foreigners and how to whenever the foreigners want to come to make a deal with our province, I'm gonna be the one who meet them and mostly like work as a translator.
When did you decide to do this kind of job?
At first, I thought that I would have a great chance to meet a wide range of businessmen coming from all walks of life, and in fact, it was. So then it turned out that it was a great chance for me to meet so many business owners in my province, which is great for my career future.
Let's talk about celebrations. Where do you usually celebrate New Year?
Yes, at home, of course, because as a Vietnamese, I normally gather with my family in Tet holidays and any kind of a special holiday. So especially in the New Year, like we gather in the evening, like we stay up late so to celebrate that kind of special event.
What is the best celebration you have ever had?
Let me guess. Well, actually, like I can't tell exactly what it is at the moment. So I think I like the last yes, the celebration that I enjoy the most recently will be like the celebration that I had with my family a couple of years ago with my father. At that time, he was still alive. I mean, yeah, then now he just passed away. So at that moment was really memorable to me.
Is there anything you cook for special occasions?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question?
Is there anything you cook for special occasions?
Well, let me think about that. Okay, so actually, I don't really have a definite answer for this one, but I believe that anyone I mean any event which can bring up any special emotion in me would be considered as a special event for me, especially like anything considered at a milestone. For example, the decision I made to choose the school when I was a high school student can also be considered as a milestone or a special event in my life.
Why do people try to change something at New Year?
I think because people are keen on the concept of New Year revolution when they want to have a new version of themselves. That's the reason why that it encouraged them to like try something new and make a new version. But it turns out most of the case fails because they just did the same thing as the previous year.
Let's talk about being happy. What makes you happy?
That's tough. I think like most of the ordinary people, then money would make me happy as it can bring me a lot of pleasures buying new stuff. It give me the chance to splurge on things that I like clothes or like wristwatch.
Now I'm going to give you a topic and I'd like you to talk about it for 1 to 2 minutes. Before you talk, you'll have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say. You can make some notes if you wish. Do you understand?
Oh, yes. Can I have some time to take a pen and a paper?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
You will see some paper and a pencil for making notes, and your topic will appear on screen soon. I'd like you to describe a job you would like to do. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So I will go with this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
All right. Remember, you have 1 minute for this, 1 to 2 minutes for this. So don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
Yes. So I would like to talk about my ideal job in the future. Then, so back in the time when I was a child, I used to dream to become a businessman who owned a lot of money. Then gradually, it turned out that I'm not pretty suitable for this position because I lack of bravery. So then at the moment, I'm working as a government official. So it gave me a chance to meet a wide range of people from all walks of life. So I know that so many business opportunity. That's why it comes to me that given all the competitive advantages that I'm having at the moment, I think like being the businessman working in the education industry can be considered as a golden opportunity for me. So in case you don't know, I'm living in Bình Phước province, which is a quite a remote area, and we don't have a lot of chance to learn English in my areas. That's why I hope that in the future, it will be great if I can be an educator, working in a foreign language, not only English but also Chinese. So and it also be a great a golden opportunity for me if I can like brings my students to foreign countries like China or Australia or Canada. That's going to be perfect for me, and I hope that by the time that by the time I turn 40, I will have a company working in this kind of industry, and also have some agents in another country to collaborate closely with me so that I can bring students from my living place.
Thank you. So Do you think you will your job will change?
Yeah, definitely. I believe so because my current job is to some extent quite tedious and
Thank you.
repetitive.
Thank you. Please put the paper and pencil down. We've been talking about a job you would like to do, and I'd like to discuss with you one or two more general questions related to this.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's consider first of all jobs that people do in your country. So, what jobs do you think young people are generally interested in these days?
I think from my observation, then young people enjoy doing something creative, like being a YouTuber or vlogger. The current generation, they enjoy doing something like really like bring them freedom rather than something repetitive like the older generation. So the other trend I noticed that they people and most a lot of the youngsters they inherit a lot of a huge fortune from their family, so they intend to do something for their pleasure rather than something require a lot of commitment,
Well,
like being an accountant.
you mentioned their being YouTubers and influencers. So is this having an effect on the more kind of traditional jobs that people did in the past, like, or people wanted to do in the past, like being a doctor or a teacher? Do you think there are fewer people who want to do that now?
I think like because the demand still stays the same, people still need doctors and like people working in a specialized industry. So I think like the demand out, like I mean the workforce maybe stay the same, or to some extent we will see a surge in those industries. Like I taught a doctors as an example for this. And previously, people only pay attention for the health, but now they pay attention to a healthy life. And because of that, that doctor, they will have more jobs than before, and as a result, it will translate into have like bigger income for their life. So I think like it just the way they do the job will be different at the moment.
So is it common now to have people doing many jobs in their careers, or do people tend to stick to one job for their whole working lives?
Okay, so I know a group of people who enjoy hustling in their free time. I mean, that they can take up 3 or 4 jobs, and with like their schedule, so that they can earn bigger money. You know that these days there is a famous saying said like two people no child but double income. So that's people in like tends to work harder and earn more money and splurge on the thing that they like, because I believe that we are encouraging the consumerism in our country. So they tend to spend more money, and the only way that they can do so is to earn more money.
Let's move on now and think about technology and work. So overall in Vietnam, how do you think technology has affected work in the last 10 years or so?
All right. So I believe like technology has so many like impacts, like so much impact on the workforce generally. Taking ChatGPT invention as an example for this, before people do it, do the work. Mostly like mentally or physically demanding, but then now with the help of ChatGPT, then people can just use a short prompts to instruct ChatGPT to give out the desired outcome, and then they get it. I mean, like they become more mentally lazy, and they can also get the thing that they want. So
So do you think there could be any negative consequences of using artificial intelligence in work?
I think that it really depends on the way that we depends on it. I mean, like on the one way, if you extremely relies on like the suggestion of ChatGPT instead of depending on your own ability, then it's
Thank you
somehow.
very much. That is the
Yeah.
end of the mock speaking test.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, let's. I have made some notes on what you said, but they are a bit of a mess. So just bear with me while I try to interpret them.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
let's talk about each category. So fluency, I thought you did pretty well. You generally spoke fluently. There wasn't much hesitation. You used cohesive devices well and flexibly as well, which is important. So you used like linking words and phrases. I think you said at one point, I didn't write this down, but people who wanted to do so. So when you say to do so, that's a back reference. You're talking about something that you said before. So that is a good use of cohesive devices and are quite sophisticated as well. With your lexical resource, there was a good range of vocabulary used. So I heard words like specialized industry. That's a good collocation. A surge in, I think you were talking about doctors and, recruiting doctors. So you talked about a surge in recruitment and also spending money. You used the word splurge, which is, that's a good use of that word. There was some inaccuracy in the use of your vocabulary. So you were talking about New Year, and I think you said New Year revolution, whereas the word you should have used was resolution. So yeah, minor errors like that, but generally it was very good. Grammar, I think. Yeah, there were quite a few grammar errors that you made, but you did use a lot of structures and you used them quite flexibly as well. So that was good, and it was generally not difficult to understand. What you were saying, despite the errors that you made.
Yeah.
Pronunciation, again, very clear. What you were saying throughout. There were some errors with things like, connected speech here and there. It wasn't, and your rhythm and intonation wasn't entirely correct. But yeah, not too many problems with that either. It was generally very clear what you were saying. So overall, yeah, it was a very good performance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I believe we're moving.
Yeah.
I believe we're moving on to a Q&A session.